Hi, my name is Jaden Bower, the current Vice President of Antioch Baptist Church Youth Ministry. This week on Something About Jesus with special guest Janelle Jackson, we will be discussing mental health. So hello, Miss Jackson. Sorry, Miss Janelle. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Can't complain. So, I do have a couple of questions. Well, first of all, introduce yourself.
My name is Janelle Jackson. I am an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. I have been providing mental health services for about 15 years now. I'm going on 16. My specialty is trauma and marriage counseling. But I do deal with other issues like anxiety, depression, those types of things as well. I own a group practice based out of Freehold. I have 8 other clinicians who work for me, and a clinician is someone who's either a social worker, licensed professional counselor, psychologist, who provide the same service as I do. So and the practice as a whole, we, between all the clinicians, we see kids as young as 6 all the way up to adulthood, as well as offer marriage counseling, as well as we offer services to the LGBTQ community.
Awesome. So what does a normal work day look like?
So normal work day, I'll give you two. Prior to the pandemic, a normal work day would be actually getting up, getting dressed, doing a 40-minute drive to the office, to be there by 10 o'clock, 10:30 to start seeing clients. And depending on the day, I would typically see anywhere between 4 and 6. Sometimes 8, but depending on the day, because I do offer evening hours. So the days I offer evening hours, I do have a break in the middle of the day, but that is a longer day with seeing clients. Post-pandemic, it's a little bit different because now I just go downstairs to my office. I am still seeing about the same amount of people. It's just that the times are a little bit different. I will see some people like at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. I do offer late night options as well. So, which is interesting because it's kind of like when you're seeing someone like 6, 7 in the morning, you're literally having like coffee and therapy, with someone. So that's typically a typical day, but I will see anywhere between 4 to 6 clients, maybe a little bit more, especially if there's a crisis going on. So.
Nice. Okay. So have you ever experienced your bias in a session?
No. And only reason why I can say no is that I know the populations that I'm not able to work with. I think as a therapist, you have to know your own limitations. So it's not necessarily this population is out of my scope of practice, but it's just not a population that I'm comfortable in treating. So I think about it that way. So because I know my limitations there are certain populations I definitely just don't treat.
Cool. How does your faith show up in your work?
It shows up in a few different ways. I think just leaving a full-time job where I worked at for 9 years as a therapist, I worked at the VA, leaving a full-time job with great benefits, great salary to come and step out on your own and run your own business. You have to step out on faith because otherwise there's no other way. There's some companies who make it and some who do not. And we've definitely been blessed that we've been able to fare really well through a few rough patches, but they never broke us. May have bent us a little bit, but never broke us. So, and at this point, we're much stronger than where we started. But I believe you have to have a prayerful family. So, I may not be the person who's going to church every day, who may not be as close to God as I should be, But I think when you come from a family of prayer warriors who are all around you, and you stay humble and you always remember where all your blessings come from, it makes a huge difference in how far you can go. So, and when I'm actually seeing clients, I do not speak about anything, any type of spirituality, only because I don't know where they're coming from and I don't want to offend anyone. So I will bring it, the only time I will talk about it is if the client that I'm seeing brings it up in session. Then we will talk about it. You know, I'm a big believer in knowing the core of who you are. And that to me encompasses three things: your power, your purpose, and your passion. And when you know those three things, that helps to figure out the core of who you are. So if spirituality comes up in this session, and this is something that I'm working on with someone, I will definitely say, you know, if someone asked you, Jaden, who are you? Would you be able to say, not a description, nothing, as just specifically say, I am, and fill in the blank? Because who you are is not going to change depending on your environment. I could be homeless, living in a shelter, have no money to my name, but the core of who I am doesn't change. Just the modality that I'll get it done will change. So I will say, so if someone asked me, you know, Janelle, who are you? And I already know that spirituality is a big cornerstone of their life, there's a two-part answer to who I am. My answer is that I'm a child of God and I'm here to serve. So if a person has already let me know spirituality is a cornerstone of their life, I will give both responses. But if this is someone I don't know where they stand, because we're not a practice that specializes in Christian counseling, I will say, I'm here to serve. So then whoever believes in whatever they believe, I'm not offending them or making them feel uncomfortable when they're coming in for services. So spirituality, it definitely plays a role in it, but you have to be aware of your audience to know how to use it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. That was an awesome answer. So speaking about like church and stuff, how do you deal with the stigma that Blacks don't get mental health checkups, but still like run to the church to like, they still run to the church? If that makes sense.
Yes. So it actually comes up a lot in therapy, especially when I'm seeing a person of color. Comes up a lot. The big piece is that, older generations, they didn't believe in therapy. They were of the mindset that you just pray it out. Whatever's going on, pray it out. It'll get better. Got to make it better. You just got to have faith. You just have to trust. And that even went as far as not just mental health, but even in the medical world, taking certain medications, going for certain checkups. Things wouldn't be done because, the thought was whatever God wanted to be, that's what it's going to be. Man can't change it. So why even go? Why try? That's one thought. Then the other thought was whether you were Christian or not, it was that whatever happens in his house stays in his house. You don't tell anybody what's going on outside of these walls. So that's another hurdle to get over. So even though I am seeing more people of color seeking therapy, which is great, it's still something that a lot of them don't tell their extended family members or even their parents sometimes, because they're not in favor of therapy. And it's not that they think therapy is bad, it's just that a lot of times they don't understand what the process is and how it works. And a lot of times when you don't understand something, you fear it because it's the unknown. It's something that makes you feel uneasy. So I definitely address that a lot with clients of color that I'm seeing.
So speaking of home, like, do you take your work home with you? So like, does like anything like interfere with your life that you're like,
The only time that happens is if there is a crisis, and the crisis could be anything from, the client having a family member who passes away to them feeling emotionally unstable for whatever reason, maybe feeling like they want to hurt themselves. Things of that nature, or if they're actually in the hospital and then the hospital's calling to gather additional information, clinical information, that I will definitely answer. You do have clients that will text from time to time. And if it's not an emergency, my clients, I would say as a whole, are really great. They will, if it's a change in a reschedule, or if something came up, they just want to let me know, but they don't want to forget about it. Maybe by the time their session comes, that'll happen sometimes. But as a whole, I think it's now because of the pandemic, I think there's more tolerance with interruptions. And I think that clients are now seeing their therapists more as real people who have their own stuff going on. So for example, I'm in a session, my daughter doing virtual school. She comes downstairs, opens the office, didn't realize I was in a session, and whispers to me, "Mom, my computer's not turning on." Of course the client can hear it. She thinks in her mind that only I can hear her. So, in that moment, I'm just like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Can you hold on a second?" I have to run upstairs and just get her back on. But it's things like that because everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
So I feel like it allows the client to see, yes, we are real people dealing with the same thing they are, but it also allows them, I feel like, to have more compassion and empathy and just understanding and tolerance and patience, which are huge things, one, to understand, and two, to hold on to. So in that way, I think it's the interaction between home and work where it's meshed, that's been a positive.
Nice. How do you remain professional and spiritual in your work?
I'm just me. I feel like that's the best answer I can give because I'm not a social worker from 8 to 4 or 8 to 12 when I'm seeing clients. It's a part of who I am, at the core of who I am. So that's not something I turn off just because I'm not working. It may not be something, I may not always verbalize the thoughts that I have just because I'm not in the therapy session, but my mind is always working because this is just who I am. So even when I have a session, prior to us working from home, my office, the offices at my practice are set up as a living room, which means that we have couches, we have chairs, we have pillows on the floor, we have coffee tables. It's a real living room setup with a desk, but the desk is often in the corner because the desk is not the most important thing. So when clients come in, they're coming into a welcoming environment because they're coming in seeing, a friend in their mind and that they're going to sit down and have a cup of coffee with and chat. I like my sessions to be conversational sessions. That's how you gather the most information and allows a person to become comfortable. So.
Okay. And last question for me, is it tough getting young people to open up in therapy, and how do you handle it, if you can say, during a pandemic or anytime?
I think it's tough getting anyone to open up, not just young people. You have to think about it. We're taught to not expose our inner workings to anyone we don't know, and even sometimes family. So knowing that a person automatically, child to adults, walking in already with their own preconceived notions about what therapy is, and they're also walking in with a little bit of a wall up, and that's understandable. I'm a stranger. They're coming in to tell all of their issues that have recently gone on or that they've been dealing with for a while. But I always tell people you should give a therapist at least 2 to 3 sessions and allow yourself that time to fill them out, to see if their style matches yours, to see if it's a good fit. And if it's not, don't be afraid to say that it's not. Don't be afraid to look for someone else. But I always say there's someone out there for everyone. It's just a matter of finding that person and figuring and just kind of feeling out their style. But I typically say that the very first session is always an informational session more than anything else, because now I got to gather the background information to not just to figure out why you came in today, but everything that's built up to that point. So even with kids, it's sometimes maybe a little bit of a longer process, only because you're gathering bits of information while also talking about things that they like or games that they love, sports that they play, so you're mixing the two. A lot of times with teens are more at that level where they're doing that talk therapy that you would do with adults. So I think a lot of times once kids understand, and all of the therapists that work for my company, I make sure that they let every client coming in know that whatever is said stays here. It's total confidentiality, unless it falls within the 3 categories of you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to hurt somebody else, or you're going to engage in some type of property destruction that will lead to someone being hurt. Or another one is that if you're really at a point where there's a lot of emotional instability, then at that point we do reach out when it's a kid to the parent, teenager to the parent. But we let the teenager, we let them know immediately. Like, this is what happens when you come here. So they understand. And I don't want anyone to ever say that they were surprised. So even if we may have to send someone to crisis for further evaluation, we let the clients know that. No matter the age, we let them know that. We frame it in an age-appropriate manner, but we let everyone know, because if a client's going to be upset that you're sending them in, they're going to be upset regardless. But the one thing they can't say is that you lied to them because you didn't tell them by admitting that this is what the plan was. So, but I think overall, depending on the personality, not just the education and experience of the therapist, but the personality of the therapist is what's going to allow a teenager, a child, and an adult to feel welcome in that space and to open up.
Awesome. So we are towards the end of something about Jesus. Do you have any questions for me or anything about the church that you would like to know?
I would not really necessary questions, but I would always just encourage everyone that it's okay to seek out more than one way for relief of whatever you're feeling, whether, it be something traumatic that's happened to you, some like anxiety, depression, or just stress management. You don't, just because you decide to come to therapy doesn't mean you have to separate yourself from the spiritual side. They can work hand in hand. And I just want everyone to know that they can always work hand in hand.
Awesome. So thank you. This is something about Jesus. Special guest Ms. Janelle Jackson, and I'm Jaden Bower, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.